Hello, ladies and gents. This is Tim Ferriss, and welcome to another episode. God damn.
Optimal minimalism.
At this altitude, I can run flat out for a half mile before my hands start shaking.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Now would seem an appropriate time.
What if I did the opposite?
I'm a cybernetic organism, living tissue over a metal endoskeleton.
Tim Ferriss Show.
That's the usual intro music, but I'd like you to hear a brand new version reimagined by none other than Justin Boreta of the Glitch Mob.
Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect.
This episode is brought to you by AG1, the daily foundational nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. I do get asked a lot what I would take if I could only take one supplement. And the true answer is invariably AG1. It simply covers a ton of bases. I usually drink it in the mornings and frequently take their travel packs with me on the road. So what is AG1? AG1 is a science-driven formulation of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food sourced nutrients. In a single scoop, AG1 gives you support for the brain, gut, and immune system. So take ownership of your health and try AG1 today. You will get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription purchase. So learn more, check it out. Go to drinkag1.com/Tim. That's drinkag1, the number 1, drinkag1.com/Tim. Last time, drinkag1.com/Tim. Check it out. This is Tim Ferriss, and welcome to another episode of The Tim Ferriss Show, where I deconstruct world-class performers to find the tools, tricks, routines, habits that you can use. And of course, those experts range from billionaire investors to chess prodigies to Arnold Schwarzenegger to everyone in between. And you do find commonalities. And in this particular episode, we delve into a world that I know very little about, and that is the world of music. We have Justin Boreta, who is a founding member of the Glitch Mob. And if you haven't heard that name or you don't recognize that name, you will definitely recognize some of their music. And it could range from their trailers or the trailers in which they're featured. So you could list Sin City 2, Edge of Tomorrow, Captain America, Spider-Man, to their commercial work. So commercials for Fiat, Audi, and so on. They also debuted their last album, Love, Death, Immortality, incredibly well on Billboard. #1 electronic album, #1 indie labels, #4 overall digital albums. And this is fascinating because from an entrepreneurial standpoint, not only are they indie, they're not associated with a big label, they are artist owned. And we delve into all of this. How did they go from unknown to on top of the world, playing to 90,000 people in Quebec with deadmau5, for instance? We dig into the war stories, the creative stories, the process, how that has been refined over time, and you get to hear some never heard before early drafts of some of their biggest hits. And Justin walks through exactly how those were refined over time to become what millions of people now love and listen to all the time. It's a fascinating discussion with an artist. Even if you feel like you have no interest in music process, you will find things ranging from his schedule to his meditative practice that you can use. It's a really fun interview. I hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, here is Justin Boreta. Justin, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Tim?
It's going well. I appreciate you making the time, and as a long-time fan, I appreciate you making the music, first and foremost.
Oh yeah, it's my pleasure to be here. I'm a huge fan of all the 4-hour Empire as well, so it's an honor to get to talk to you.
And I know I guess initially connected via Twitter, I think it was, is how we came in contact. Is that how the pieces came together?
Yeah, I think so. I think you had posted something on Soundtracking, which is a app that we both used, and I started following on there, and then yeah, we just kind of started chatting from there. That had to be a year or two ago.
Yeah, it probably was. And then I've continued as a consumer of music, and now we finally have a chance to dig into the music. So the first question I really wanted to ask you is what you are world class at, or what your closest friends or associates or band members consider you world class at.
It's a good question. I think that we're known to perform crazy, intense, and perform and produce really crazy, intense, cinematic music. We're kind of off in our own category, and we're also known for being a very DIY operation. We do almost everything ourselves. We have we own our own label, and we have a very close relationship with our fans.
So how does the closeness with the fans manifest itself? And what has led to that?
Well, the funny thing about,
because your fans are diehard. I mean, really, really diehard, which I appreciate.
Absolutely.
So how did that happen? What do you think are the factors?
It's, I think, one of the interesting things about building something that's very DIY is it's been a very, very slow burn for us. We've been at this for a while. I think the very first Glitch Mob show just the other day, by the way, I should mention, Glitch Mob is myself, two other guys, Edit and Ua, names Ed and Josh, who are also in the group. And when we got our start, Josh found the very first mixtape from us in, I think it was 2006 the other day when he was cleaning out his house. So it's been a long process for us, and right out of the gates, we were interacting with our fans. I mean, this is going to date me, but this was back in the days of MySpace. So on our mixtape, it said myspace.com/theglitchmob. But right away, what we would do is when we first started playing shows, we would finish every show and we would take a stack of CDs and hand them out to people. And we continued that tradition. And in fact, we still kind of do that. So it was baked into our DNA from day one to have a very hand-to-hand, face-to-face interaction with people. And we've kind of continued that ethos through into the era of Twitter and Snapchat and Instagram and everything, where we have a very close personal relationship. There's people we've known, and we've been touring for quite a while now. So, and we actually also have a group of very ultra diehard fans that are in a sort of a forum called The Mob, and we meet up with them before every show and after the show, and we have we do fun projects and stuff like that. So for us, we also get a lot of feedback back from them. I mean, when we very first started doing this, it was us. We were making these more dance floor centric tracks, and I think the more we started to realize how much music has the ability to affect people, and we started to get these stories back from people about our music being a part of their lives in some way, we started to take everything really very seriously. And because we have such a close relationship with people, they have the logo tattooed on their body, which is the first time we saw that, we thought, wow, this is someone who took the time to get the logo tattooed on their body, which we all have tattoos, and our manager does too. So we take everything very seriously, and we take the power of music to be very serious. It's something that's very important to us. And
I mean, one of the stories, of course, that really struck me was the Grant Corgan story. It was a snowmobile. After a snowmobile accident, was I guess basically diagnosed as potentially never walking again. And fast forward, after listening to the Glitch Mob and PT and interacting with you guys, planted a Glitch Mob flag at the South Pole after, I guess, traveling the majority of the way in a push sled and then walking the last, whether it was 100 feet or 100 yards, I don't recall, but just such an incredible story. How did that change you guys? And of course, I'm going to come back to the origin story and ask more questions, but how did that change, if it did, your creative process or how you think about your craft after that type of story comes to you?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely did, and that was something that really, I'd say, got into the DNA of what we do. You know, I think that when we really realized, and when we first met Grant, actually, a friend of his had emailed us And this is, I think this is also part of us being really tapped into what people say, is that, I mean, this email could have gone away, but we pay attention to important emails like this. And someone had emailed and said, hey, look, my friend got in a really bad accident and he's never going to walk again. And, he loves your music. Is there anything you can do to cheer him up? And so we said, obviously. So we had someone on our team send him a bunch of stuff, just like we signed some drumsticks and some CDs and everything. And then we got a friendship going with him from there. And then he showed up at one of our shows in Reno and he was on crutches. And he said, thank you guys for being there so much. And then he came out to our show. We played at Red Rocks. And when he showed us that video, or the picture of him at the South Pole, I mean, we all were actually moved to tears. It was a fantastic moment. And I think that was something when we realized that music really does have the power to transcend, or maybe it was, I also feel like it's Grant is an amazing guy as is. And the fact that he could do that, the fact that we even helped kind of nudge him along, and I think that's also along with his friends and families, and we played a part in that, it really made us take everything very, very seriously. And, I think it's easy to be cynical these days about everything, and music in particular. But it's a very, very serious thing to us.
No, it's a very powerful art form. And I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine about just the interspecies differences and similarities related to beat and music, and just trying to determine, obviously outside of music theory, but what itch does music scratch for human beings? It's such a fascinating question for me. And
it's so fascinating. Have you read this book called This Is Your Brain on Music?
I have not.
I can't recommend that enough. It's by this guy named Daniel Levitin, and he really digs into that whole question, and it gets deep into neuroscience. But it is a really fascinating thing, and he goes into the evolutionary thinking behind why music does what it does. It's almost too much for me to even get into here. And I can't say I fully understand a lot of the neuroscience, but it's really interesting.
Awesome. No, I wanted to just talk about, or ask you about, really what makes the Glitch Mob unique and different, because there are obviously so many bands out there. There's so much noise. There's so many people and bands clamoring for attention. But you've hit a point where I was watching this video of, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it was 90,000 people in Quebec, and what is it that? Well, number one, actually, I'm bouncing around a little bit, but what does it feel like to be on stage in front of 90,000 people? Is there anything you can compare it to?
Actually, it's a really hard feeling to describe, and the only thing I can liken it to is skydiving. Have you tried skydiving before?
I have.
So the feeling with skydiving where you jump out of the airplane and it's so crazy, you almost aren't even scared. It's so fucking surreal. You're like, wow, okay, I'm just experiencing this right now.
Right. Yes, I do.
That's kind of the feeling of being on a stage like that. Is it's so surreal, and it's so there's like a terminal velocity with the amount of people that once it gets so big, it just feels like you're in a dream. It's very surreal, and it's also actually very. There's something really fascinating that happens in crowds that big, where you can feel, even with that many people, you can feel the way that the energy of the music can affect people. And as you're riding the ups and downs and the waves of the crowd, there's some sort of primal interaction that happens. And with that many people, it's really intense. And it's also a very meditative experience for me. Even that show in particular, when I was up there playing, I remember thinking, almost getting a chance to listen to my music and then see everyone experiencing the music and hear it along with them, and sort of getting a dose of my own medicine there. So it's a very kind of spiritual, surreal experience to be up there.
Well, it has to be some type of communion. I mean, it's having done some experimentation in the, for lack of a better term, spiritual realm, which we can get into the pharmacology of another time, but that energetic transmission, that interaction is from my just empirical experience at least, absolutely real. So I cannot even imagine being the focal point of 90,000 human beings. It just must be, transcendental almost on some level.
Absolutely.
Now you did send me, you sent me an email, and we've corresponded, of course, and you mentioned a few things, and you said that these are all interesting because not only are we indie, but we're artist owned. And I wanted you to elaborate on that because I'm not familiar with the music industry. I'm an avid listener of music, but what do those two terms mean? And just to provide some context for people, and I'm reading from Wikipedia here, but the sophomore Glitch Mob album Love, Death, Immortality debuted at #1 on the Billboard Dance Electronic Songs chart. Now that sounds like a pretty big deal, and I would imagine it is, right?
Yeah, I think, in a way it is, and in a way it's not. I guess, to be quite honest, we don't pay too much attention to the charting and it's nice to be recognized for what you do. And I think it's funny because we're kind of like the oddballs of the electronic music or EDM world. And which just a kind of a side note, I don't totally use those terms interchangeably. I think, and I was actually getting a chance to come on this podcast, made me kind of think about this because just for me personally, when I think of electronic music, it's music, and EDM is music plus industry plus apps plus festivals and Spotify, everything into one. So I kind of consider them to be two separate things. But that aside, the whole thing with the difference between an independent and a major and an artist-owned label. So when we first dropped our album and it did well, it hit #1 on that electronic chart, and it made it to number 13 in the top 20, which is pretty crazy actually, because when you look at a lot of the albums that were the top 20 in that point in time, it was people like Katy Perry or Eric Church, who's this country guy, and a lot of these people are on major labels. And so those are the equivalent of big, massive companies. These labels they're huge. Something like Interscope is a very big company. So then you have an independent label, which is a much smaller company, potentially, that is owned and not backed by this effective huge corporation. And then you have an artist-owned label, which means that we actually do everything. So we provide all of these things together. So it's a very in-house operation.
So you have, now your operations are not, at least the performances are real productions. This is not, so I would imagine you have had to wear, and you guys have all had to wear a lot of hats. What does your team currently look like?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had, and I think that's also part of the ethos and everything that has gotten us to where we are today is actually the wearing of multiple hats, and we all have our own specific things that we're good at. There was a point in time when we very first got this thing going where we actually built our own light show. Josh and I went to Home Depot and we were hammering and sawing lights outside of Ed's house while he was inside mixing down some audio. And we're very, very DIY. We schlepped this thing in a U-Haul trailer around the country. And, it's the fact today that we actually have a team of people around us that can help. And actually people that are better than us at what we do that was a big moment for us, because we actually would, we mix and master our own music. Actually, well, the last albums we've had other people do the mastering, but we produce, we record, we do all the music stuff ourselves. We had actually built the stage show ourselves. We programmed it. We programmed the lights. We bought the lights. So we kind of did everything. And so fast forward to now, we have a team of people that are really experts at what they do. So for instance, for the live show, there's a guy named Martin Phillips, and Martin Phillips is a specific stage show designer. Like that's what he does. So he meets with an artist, and he's kind of like a creative director type guy where he can hear the music, and then we collaborate with him with a bunch of other people to basically create the stage show, which was called The Blade. So there's a guy named Matt Davis, who's the programmer. So he's a expert level stage design programmer. I mean, this guy he's one of our dearest friends. He's the best. And he basically programs all of the under the hood stuff that makes the Blade tick. And so when we go out on tour, there's about 14 to 15 people total to make the show happen.
Got it. And how many of those people are full-time with you guys, or is the core three of you the only full-time?
So the only full-time people, so there's us, obviously. We have a manager, Kevin Wolf, who has been with us since day one, and our booking agent who takes care of all the live shows named Steve, and he's also been with us since day one. And then there's a tour manager who manages everything that happens out on the road and to make everything else happen. So those are the main full-time people. And then we have someone who does all of the social media strategy and stuff. And we actually do all of the posting and tweeting and Instagramming ourselves, but there's someone who deals with all of the nuts and bolts of the internet side of things.
Right. Got it. And I'd love to hear a little bit. This is going to be very nitty gritty, but I know there are going to be people who are very curious about this. When you're in the studio, as it sounds like you are now, what is the software that you use on a daily or weekly basis? What are the tools that you guys use?
So right now we base everything on this program called Ableton, and it's a very ubiquitous program these days. I think most people are starting to produce on it, and we've actually been around the block on everything. I mean, we've used for the audio nerds out there. I mean, we started with Pro Tools, and we moved to Cubase, and then we've done Logic. And so we've tried everything, and Ed used to have tons of outboard gear. So
what is outboard gear?
So right now, the term is called in the box, which means everything is done in the computer. Like our studio, it's just a monitor, a keyboard, and an actual piano keyboard for playing notes. And then some studios have tons of gear that lives on the outside of the computer. So there's compressors and EQs and a lot of tools that are these custom boxes that cost thousands of dollars that are really high-end stuff that now that the technology is getting more and more powerful, we actually sold everything outboard and moved in the box so that we could actually travel. So and it's arguable. I mean, there's the whole, it's funny because like the analog digital argument permeates music in all sorts of different ways. I mean, even in the sort of, there's people who are vinyl purists or people who like to listen to Spotify because it's easier. So it's the same thing in the production side. There's some people that think that analog is the way to get the best quality sound, and we're not really arguing that, but we actually, it's a lot easier because also we have a distributed studio. So our toolbox is Ableton, a handful of plugins, and then everything is synced on Dropbox. So that way we can have sessions open in all different machines, and then we use these plugins called Universal Audio that actually emulate all the outboard gear that you could buy. Very cool.
And on the road, does that change at all, or is aside from aside from the actual Blade and so on, does the actual music production side of things change much when you're performing, or are you still working off of primarily laptops with Ableton?
So it does change entirely, actually. But the Ableton software stays the same, and that's the benefit of the way that Ableton is put together, is that it's actually a production and a performance suite all in one. So we write everything in Ableton, and then because we're all basically synced up and everything is very modular, then there's a system that drives the Blade, and that's the thing that Matt has programmed, and we call it Lil Kim, and it's this.
Why do you call it Lil Kim?
Because we just needed a name for it, and it's this big, just gnarly pile of computers and boxes and wires, and Ed just said, "Let's call it Lil Kim." So it's a Mac Pro, and then it has two Mac Minis in there, and the Mac Minis actually do all the MIDI routing for the blade. And then there's another laptop, which is a backup system. So if the Mac Pro dies, we have a button. There's a big red button that will switch, because when you're playing these huge crowds, you have to have layers of redundancy. So we have many different layers of redundancy. But Lil Kim, it's still based on Ableton, but we moved the entire thing to a more beefy and robust system. And then there's a lot of audio that comes out, and this is actually something that does separate us from, I would say, 9% of other electronic artists out there, is that we split out our audio like a typical band. And what that means is, like, let's say you go see a rock band play. There's a guy playing bass, there's a guy playing drums and vocals, and then there's someone who's at the front of house, which is the sound booth up front, who's mixing all these together to fit the sound of the room and get the optimal sound. Now, when you go see most DJs play, they're playing music that's already been mixed together. So it's just one track, and there's not a whole lot that he can do. So we actually are a hybrid of the live rock world and then the electronic world, in that we actually send out kick, snare, and all the different elements of the sound to come out, so that our sound engineer can really tweak and get the most optimal sound for each room we play in.
That's very cool. And the kick is the bass drum.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it. And just to rewind for a second, what is mastering exactly?
So mastering. So let's say we finish our album. I'll give you a real world example. Is we finished writing Love, Death, and Mortality after 2 years of writing it. And mastering is the process of taking it from being an unfinished product to basically a finished listening product that you would buy on a CD or something. And there's stuff that happens. A lot of it has to do with evening out levels or changing the quality of the sound. There's certain things that have to happen to have it be on a recorded medium. And it changes depending on what music it is, but it's really just the finishing process, that the last final thing that makes music all sound consistent. Or for instance, let's say some of like one song is quieter than the other. Well, the mastering engineer, who's not us, would go through and tweak everything just a little bit so that it gets to be a consistent listen, and then the bass and the treble and everything is matched throughout the record.
Got it. And I know I'm bouncing around here with Ableton. So Ableton has come up a few times for me recently, and one of the contexts which I was surprised by is that, not that I have any right to be surprised because I know nothing about this stuff, but Ira Glass of This American Life uses Ableton for his performances when he does speeches and wants to layer in audio and so on.
Oh, wow.
Do you, if you were to create a podcast yourself, would you use Ableton for that, or would that be overkill?
No, I would use Ableton. I mean, I guess it's hard to not be biased because I use it all day, every day. But I actually think that you can do some really complex and interesting stuff with it, or you can do really, really basic stuff. I mean, actually, Ableton's a program that comes up a lot because the learning curve is not too bad. For instance, a friend of mine just had his girlfriend's 12 or 13-year-old little brother wanted to learn to DJ and produce. So that's, you'd give a beginner, give him Ableton. So
really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's easier than Pro Tools, for instance.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
It's really not too hard to learn in the grand scheme of things.
Interesting. So I'm at a point where I'm interested in audio. I would not that I plan on doing it everything myself, but I'd like to have a fundamental set of audio editing skills because I find it interesting.
Yeah.
If I'm starting from scratch and I'm trying to choose from GarageBand, Audacity, Pro Tools, Ableton, and I'm starting from ground zero, so I have no training in any of them, Ableton would be your recommendation?
Yeah, I would say so. Also, because Ableton is so robust and is used so widely, you get the benefit of people like us hammering on it. And so, for instance, Ableton has a very reliable crash feature. So if the program crashes, it saves your undo history. So that means that it will pick up. You won't lose a whole lot if it crashes. And other programs have that, but because it's really, it's a very living, breathing piece of software and it's used so much by the community, I think that that it's really the right way to go. And the stuff that they're doing with it over the next couple of years, I think it's going to be really crazy, and it's worth the time to figure it out. And also, you can do all sorts of other crazy stuff with it, but even for the really basic things, I mean, yeah, even for instance, there's progress. It's arguable. Some people will tell you that Pro Tools and Logic are more robust and powerful in what they can do, and that might be true. However, I would say that Ableton, you get the most bang for your buck. I mean, we didn't choose it because it's the absolute best and most complex Swiss Army knife. It's actually the fastest way to get things done.
Cool. Okay, no, say no more. That's a great way to convince me. Sold. I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about the commercial success that you've had, because I find it so fascinating and encouraging that you are artist owned, very DIY, yet your music shows up all over the place. I mean, it's I remember you sent me a number of links, some of which I had seen before, whether it's Sin City 2, Edge of Tomorrow, Captain America, Spider-Man, and just the list just goes on and on and on and on and on. How did you, as this artist-owned upstart, and I suppose ask, have you always been artist-owned? So maybe you can answer that too. But how have you ended up getting into these massive motion pictures, for instance?
Yeah, well, and we have always been artist owned. Yeah, absolutely. Just to jump around one little bit here, I think that the part of our whole genesis was really just out of the love of music. When we first started in 2006 and 2007, we started doing this. You would never say, "I'm going to be a producer because I want to be rich or famous or even cool." In fact, at that point in time, electronic music was relegated to raves, and I don't know, it just wasn't even anywhere fucking close to mainstream culture, which now it is. So it was funny. I mean, even remember doing interviews at that when we very first getting some traction, and people saying, "What do you make?" We're kind of like, electronic music, because it was rock and hip hop was really the thing. So we almost had to love it because it felt like that's just what we were doing. We were just kind of the oddballs of music, and that's cool because we just like to do what we do, and we are fascinated with. There's a really interesting merger between technology and artistry, which is part of the whole thing. It was sort of like we're tech guys and tech fans, and at the same time we also like the art of music. So for us, it was really a passion project. Like, none of us ever decided to say, you know what, let's make a band, we're going to call the Glitch Mob and we're going to do this. It just kind of happened. So that said, that's always how we've done things. And when we wrote our first full-length album, Drink the Sea, before that we were making, I would say, more dance floor tracks that had a more hip-hop swag kind of, it was really like more cut up hip-hop style stuff where it was just more dance floor music. And so when we made Drink the Sea, people expected us to do that, and we took a left turn, and we all were having we had a difficult moment in life, and Drink the Sea for us it was funny, we all collectively were like having a sad about something, like breakups and heartbreak. And so we said, you know what, fuck what people expect us to do. We're just going to make this thing that was a very cathartic record for us. And it was a very personal record. And we didn't play that for anybody. We didn't play it for our managers. We didn't play it for our friends. We just basically disappeared for a year. And
when was that? What,
that was like 2009, 2010, I think, is when it came out.
Okay.
And I think it was 2010 Drink the Sea came out. So that said, we had no particular intention with that. We about how it would be received or anything. It was very like a diary piece for us. It was a very introspective record. And the interesting thing is that the commercial success, or the superhero movies that started to glom onto it just happened naturally. We never intended for that to happen. I think we didn't even understand why. We said, "Oh wow, this is really cool." And we also just happened to like superhero movies, so it was a really cool thing.
Were you a comic book nerd growing up, or no?
No, I wasn't a comic book nerd, but I was definitely into Transformers.
And I don't say that in a derogatory way, since I have like, I was a major comic book nerd.
No, I never really got into. I had the Ren and Stimpy comic. That was the only one I really had. I loved Ren and Stimpy. I was really into horror movies and Stephen King. I was read a lot of Stephen King books growing up and stuff like that. But we never. I guess we never really just intended for that to happen. I actually didn't understand why these movies were choosing our music to use. And I think there's something inherently cinematic about our music, and something else that I learned later in time was that it was about the dramatic changes in tonality that happened. Which is something that we did naturally. So like one of our songs will start off with an emotion, and we'll say, okay, now this feels eerie and ethereal, and then boom, it switches to zombie attack mode, and then it becomes really violent, and then back. So we play with emotions texturally like that. And that was just more of an explorative phase for us.
Are there any particular songs or tracks that exemplify that people should listen to?
I can actually play you something right here.
That'd be great.
Let's see. So I'm gonna play. This is a track called Animus Vox off of our very first album. There you go. So you can kind of get the idea of there.
Yeah.
Something felt very tense, and you didn't really know what's going to happen, and then it goes and switches right there.
Right. No, I mean, that's it's kind of, and I mean this in the most positive way, sort of screams movie preview, right? I mean, it's
absolutely,
because you need that sort of tension, build up, shock, curiosity, and then go see the movie, right? Now tell me, I'd love for you to tell me a story of the first movie that you considered a real movie to reach out to you guys. Like, how did that happen? What was the email? What was the phone call? Did you guys believe it? Like, tell me a story of one of those.
I'll tell you one that sticks out, and that was actually the Sin City 2 trailer. And that one was special because I love Sin City. And the funny thing was that we were talking about making a video for Can't Kill Us, and that's the song that's in that video. So we had a visual.
So they're like, hey, no problem, we'll make a $20 million trailer for you.
Yeah, exactly. And apparently Robert Rodriguez, who I'm a huge fan of, I love Machete, and I love the whole his whole thing in Grindhouse. And so when he said, hey, we want to use this song for the trailer, I was like, well, we don't have to make a music video. And, it's just the most badass thing possible. And a lot of the times, they will, with the people who cut movie trailers, who are actually, in general, the people who make movie trailers are a separate, and I'm not an expert on this by any means, but this is from what I understand, is the people who make movie trailers are different from the people who make the movie. Right. Especially in these big companies, but it's different with Robert Rodriguez. So he actually does everything himself. He's kind of like us. So he actually chose the song, he found it, and then he stuck it in there. And I think that song, Can't Kill Us, it's just pure distilled badassery, and the fact that ended up in that movie, I was like, really? Are you actually? Is that going to happen? I couldn't even.
Doesn't hurt having Jessica Alba in there either.
No, that moment did not suck.
So did Robert Rodriguez just email like info@theglitchmob.com or like give me some details here?
So there's a company that that basically serves as an agent for licensing and everything like that. So they're called Zinc, and they're from Los Angeles, and they basically have our music, and they have relationships with people out in the film and TV world who I actually don't know a whole lot about that aside from just making the music and my minimal access to that. So then I think the way it works is that the people in the licensing worlds have, so like if you're Robert Rodriguez and you're cutting a trailer, you put a call out, and maybe your producer will get basically demos or a bunch of different companies will submit ideas for what this might be, and they'll put in what they'll call a temp track, which is something that it has a general feel of what you might want. And every now and again that doesn't happen like that. Actually, sometimes there'll be a director who, I don't know. He might have heard the album and just said, "Oh, that's it." I actually don't even really know. But when we got that email, I kind of lost my shit.
And how does someone like Robert Rodriguez find? I'm looking at your website right now, theglitchmob.com. How does someone find Zinc, for instance? Do they go to some music specific IMDb and then search for your band and find the contact info for Zinc, or how does someone and I ask partially because not too long ago, and I love your timeline, by the way, for your band, because if you look at your like 2006, 2007, and then you have 2010 for the first album, it matches my first book and second book. And I remember doing a trailer for the 4 Hour Body, and I just wanted from the very beginning in my head, I had Splinter, this track from Seven Dust in my head, and I wanted to license it. And with a larger label. Now, suffice to say, I was like, cool, just reach out to the band, get the okay, no problem.
Yeah.
And it was the most complicated quagmire of an experience. It's like, oh, wait, no, there's 17 people. This isn't true with Splinter, but you look at some songs, it's like, no, there's 17 people who own it, but then there's 17 people who wrote it, and then there's 17 more people who you need to get permissions from. And I was like, oh my God, this is really complicated. So it would be really nice to just reach out to, for instance, an agency or figure out, it was hard just for me to figure out who owned what. So how does someone find the Zinc agency and then reach out to them about your music, for instance?
Well, the interesting thing, and this kind of actually goes back to being artist owned, is that we're a very small and nimble organization, because that's part of the thing when that's that clusterfuck experience you had dealing with.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
and,
like,
and now, in fairness, just because I don't want to, I want to give them full credit. The Seven Dust guys are total sweethearts and were awesome. It had nothing to do with them not wanting it to happen, and it did end up happening, and which was very generous of them. But it was just on the label side. So not to interrupt, but I wanted to make sure I said that.
Of course, no. I think that's important to say. And a lot of the times, bands on labels don't know what their managers are doing to represent them, or sometimes it's hard to get a hold of them. And I just think that actually, and I know people that work at labels. There's a lot of super brilliant, amazing people who work at labels, but I think institutionally, it's a difficult way to get things done when you have to telephone anything through 17 people to get a yes or no. It's just complex. But for us, yeah, I mean, our manager Kevin, for instance, I mean, the way that a lot of this stuff comes in, will go straight through him. And he's really the fourth member. I mean, we call him a manager, but he's just like one of our best friends, and he's like the fourth member of the band. And so a lot of this stuff comes in and I think because, I mean, I can't speak for other people, but yeah, I mean, I'd say he reads most emails that come in, and sometimes people will tweet us, and I actually read all the Twitter posts, and so do the other guys. And so between all that, we keep our ear to the ground as far as what's going on. But you can also check out Zinc. It's like ZYNC music.
Cool. No, I'm just so fascinated by the inner
Yeah.
workings of all this because LA and music in general is just like one big labyrinthine, if that's the right word. It's just this huge mystery to me in so many ways.
It is, I must say that it is to me too, and I have to say to take everything I say with a grain of salt because I actually don't think that I know that much about the music industry. Because we're so strange, I actually don't. I think that I'm really the Glitch Mob is kind of the edge case here. So,
no, that's what this podcast is all about, though, studying the edge cases. No, I'm so. That's part of the reason I really wanted to chat with you guys, and so just to rewind to Sin City 2 for a second, was that the lead domino that triggered the other movies, or? Well, let me ask you maybe a slightly different question. So, and I apologize, I'm blanking. Your manager's name, the fourth member?
Kevin.
Kevin. What is Kevin's superpower? What is he world class at?
Kevin, it's funny, we joke about him, but we call him the Buddha. And he is someone that in a world that is it's a complex, it can be a very stressful, very last minute, high demand world. Kevin, what he does and I got to say that a huge portion of Glitch Mob's success comes back to Kevin. And obviously it's a team effort because the music is really first and foremost, but something that he's always, pushed us to do is just to do us. And there's been times where he's never asked to hear our music, or he's never pushed us in a certain direction because he just wants to foster what's been our natural voice this whole time. And some managers would say, okay, maybe this thing is cool right now, you should do that. Or maybe that thing is cool, you should do that. And he's always allowed us to just, and really helped us just do us. And I think that, part of that whole process is that he helps navigate and insulate us from a lot of the bullshit that can happen, because ultimately the creative process for us can be long, it can be fragile, it can be difficult. And he basically is there to let us do what we need to do to focus on music and just write good songs. Because like you said, the music industry is a really complex, crazy place. But when you really boil it down, aside from, all the industry side of things, I'm just here to make music, and we are here for that primal connection we were talking about that music provides between people. So he helps to create that dynamic.
Very cool. And maybe you could tell me about an internal debate. You don't have to name names, but I'm really curious to know. You've had this success, which I hope will continue on an upward trajectory. That creative process, in the beginning, it's just you and a couple of guys in a room making music, right? It's all the things in your head that you're bouncing back and forth. At a point, there's a lot of inbound. There's a lot of feedback from fans. There's a lot of feedback from just multitudes of people. Mm-hmm. How do you guys resolve the external pressures with the sort of silence and void necessary to do good creative work?
I think that it's definitely being so plugged in is a double-edged sword, because I think that if you are plugged in to a certain extent, you're going to internalize some of the stuff that comes your way, no matter what. I think ultimately for us, having three of us helps, for one thing. The fact that there we have three of us to check each other, and it's a very ping pong style creative process that by the time it bounces off all three of us, the average of our own creative worlds is just kind of Glitch Mob. I think we have a very small trusted committee of people, and to be quite honest, I don't actually think we take anyone else's feedback. Even the very small committee of people, we really just listen to ourselves. And even if someone who we really trust is saying, I don't like this or I don't like that, then we still just have to follow what has gotten us to this point. And that is our own intuition and our own creative sensibility and really telling our own story, but what that might be in the particular moment, and whatever that might be, we have ended up being the type of artist that can kind of go many different directions. I think some artists make similar albums and say the same thing. Not the same thing, but I guess, texturally speaking, actually some of my favorite artists, for instance, I don't know if you've heard this group called Boards of Canada.
I have not.
They're
Boards, Boards.
Yeah, it's very droney, beautiful music, and their albums for me it's almost like a familiar old friend that I can revisit over and over again. And they have this sort of one world they put you in, and we've ended up being, and that's just kind of their DNA. And for us, we like to keep it exciting for ourselves and change things up, and that's really part of our process. And following that intuition, I think, has kept everything true, and really not listening to what people say or what might be cool. And that's kind of also how we end up being the, the quote unquote oddballs of the current electronic music industries. We don't really pay a whole lot of attention to what our peers and contemporaries are doing.
Yeah, it's when you're chasing what's cool, it's already too late. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's you're gonna paddle like hell, and you're gonna be 20 feet behind the wave.
Exactly.
But I'm curious to talk a little bit more about this committee, because I don't ask. I ask for input, but I'm very selective about the type of input that I let through into the process. And I'm curious to hear how you solicit feedback, what you ask for, because, for example, in my writing, before I ask anyone to tell me what they like or don't like, I ask them to read through a draft and just indicate what is unclear or what is confusing.
Yeah.
And that depersonalizes it. It makes it, and you get more of a consensus also. If I have 5 people read it and they all flag a couple of areas as unclear, it means those need to change. That I won't debate that. That's a poor job on my part. What type of feedback, or how do you solicit feedback?
So this is an interesting process. I think there's something about music that is about intuition, right? It's like it's about getting your brain out of the way. And so this is a funny thing that happens where I'll play it, let's say for my mom, or for a friend who doesn't happen to be a musician. And in a lot of times I'll value that sort of feedback tremendously, in this sense, because they'll say something like, I'm not a producer, but this song to me feels like X, Y, or Z. And for me, it's a more pure response. And I just want to hear how it makes people feel, or what the very first thought that comes to them, versus someone who's a producer friend of ours who might be there who's going to zoom in on the details.
Right.
So I'm really looking for just the general feeling, or what is the song elicit in you? What sort of images does this bring up? And I wouldn't say we're really prone to changing stuff too much, although with the last record, we had recorded all these vocals, and we actually wrote all of the lyrics and all the melodies. So there's a point where we thought this record was just about done. And we had said, you know what, we're going to do this because we want to try our hand at it. And there was just something not right about it. It's hard to put your finger on when you listen to a song. It's such an interesting mixture between technical and intuitive. But when we played these songs, there's just something that wasn't quite right. And I think at that point, that's when we go play it to someone else to almost confirm or deny what it is I feel. I think, there's I wouldn't say, does this sound bad to you? I would just play it for someone. And they're like, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of sucks. So, okay, great. So we actually had an entirely different record done. We had vocals that we wrote and recorded, and we deleted everything. And that's why some of these songs ended up having 200-300 revisions. So we had a tour booked in September of 2013, and we had all this stuff pending on that. And then we canceled all of that because we said, you know what? The album's not good enough. And then what we ended up doing, and all the songs you hear now were done in an entirely different process, which was that we gave the song to a professional vocalist and lyricist who's that's what they do, and we just let them run with it and be themselves. And we realized that at least at this point in time, that writing lyrics and melodies is not our forte. So all the lyrics you hear now were done in this way.
Got it. And when you're in the studio and you don't have a semi-finished product, right? You're starting from scratch. What does a day in the studio look like when you are trying to work on a track that is nothing?
So the way we're working, and our process changes so much. I'll speak to what's happening right now. We're actually in the studio at the moment. I'll be heading over there after we hop off this call. But what we've done is we take some time in our solo studios and we write what we call sketches. So we have a very basic palette of instruments. It's just like it's almost as if you were painting and you just had 3 colors, or even just a pencil. Like, what can you do with this? So it's focusing on the structure, the feeling, the overall picture of the song. So Ed and Josh and I all went to our own studios and wrote about 5 sketches each over the course of a week.
And by sketches, you mean you were all independently DJs before the band was formed. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, and we're all producers, DJs on our own.
Got it. So you're creating that. And again, I'm not from the music world, but in the same way that, say, the Neptunes might create a beat that someone would listen to lay their music on top of, you guys are all creating that type of framework of sounds, and that's
Absolutely.
the sketch. Got it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like something so like, we would all be in our own individual studios and create a sketch that's just a really basic. And the reason it's a sketch is that it's just when you have instruments that don't sound glossy and super complete, it's just like a basic piano patch, very, very basic drums. You can really focusing on the songwriting itself. And so it almost sounds like a demo from GarageBand or something. Like, it's really crappy. If you heard our sketches, you'd think, wow, really? Like that's what, that's what the song started as.
Oh man, we might have to get that as a podcast bonus. Sketch versus finished product would be amazing.
Actually, I have some of those loaded up.
Oh, do you? Oh my god, I would love. Can we listen to a sketch and then the finished product for something?
Yeah, let's do it actually. But while we're here, we should jump in really quick.
Yeah.
This is funny. So no one else has ever heard these before outside of the Glitch Mob. So I thought this would be actually a perfect opportunity to illustrate the difference between both of them. So, this is a song on our new record called "Our Demons," and this is about 2 years and about 300 revisions in between these two. So. Here's the first one that we wrote out, and we moved to Joshua Tree in the desert, and we lived there for a month to write music. And this is the very first one, version 6. So that's a sketch.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's the completed version 394.
That's version 394.
Yes.
God, it's like my blog posts. No, I love that though, because I've interviewed so many people on the podcast, and if you look at the top performers, and correct me if this isn't the case, but there's a very significant degree of just obsessive perfectionism.
Oh yeah.
required to get to the point where you create something that has any degree of sort of pop and longevity.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's a really, I mean, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that way for us. I think that, but the attention to detail is really, it's just microscopic. And I think that really, it goes back to caring about, and the funny thing is that it's not for anyone else either. It's like, you just have to know that every punctuation point is there, and that, you know, everything is just right.
What do the and I don't know if I should call them songs or tracks. My vocabulary for music is off. What do you prefer to call songs?
I kind of use them interchangeably.
Okay, so what are the songs that have had the widest appeal, that have ended up most popular? What do they have in common, if anything? Whether that's the actual in the end product, or in the process that goes into it, or otherwise. There's
two kind of points to that are really interesting. So, I would say one of our most popular songs, and I've thought about this a lot, and one of our most popular songs is Fortune Days. And the interesting thing that happens with this, this is a funny side note, because I have the sketch loaded up right here if we want to.
Oh yeah. No.
I'll play it for you right after this. But so when we work on songs, we have working titles. So when we make a sketch, we just write something, just some whatever that's like kind of on our mind at the time. There's a really funny working titles for all these songs. So Fortune Days used to be called Something's About to Happen, because it feels like if there's something, it's just tense. I don't know, something's about to happen. Or there's songs like there's another one called Yacht Sex or Super Bangin' Track. So it's like kind of just ridiculous, funny stuff. So Fortune Days, Something's About to Happen, when we wrote that song, which ended up being one of our biggest tracks. And it's the same with our other ones, are the ones that we didn't expect to be the biggest tracks. This was not the lead off single or anything. It just took on a life of its own. And so it's the same thing happened with Love, Death, and Mortality. The ones that we thought were going to be, okay, this is definitely going to be the one that takes hold, absolutely was not. And in fact, Can't Kill Us, which we wrote, which ended up being the one on Sin City, and the one that was, if you look on Spotify, it's our most played track from that record, and it's the video on YouTube and everything.
Can't Kill
Us. Can't Kill Us, yeah. Mm-hmm. That one obviously resonated with many people, but that was the one that we didn't think was going to be. We were like, let's just write one just really kind of weird, off the cuff, badass song. But for us, that was us just letting go a little bit and running with something that we didn't really care if it had any sort of resonance with people.
I love it. So Fortune Days, one of the most popular tracks from the Glitch Mob. You have the draft, the sketch. I'd love to hear the sketch and the finished product, or the later draft.
Totally. Yeah. No one else has ever heard this. So it's just you and I here, Tim. Let's play it.
Just us, just the two of us.
Okay, so
got it.
Kind of get that vibe. So then I'll play just a little clip of the finished version.
Which version was that?
That was it doesn't have the song number in there, but that's July 2009.
Okay, got it.
So that was probably about we finished the album in winter, so that was about 6 months.
Very cool.
So yeah, I think that only consistent thing that shows the songs that resonate with people are the ones that we're never going to be able to tell. So I've just given up trying to figure that out and just kind of make more music.
It's kind of like the Costanza principle. He's like, Jerry, I figured it out. I just need to do the opposite of everything that I think I should do, and it'll be perfect. It's like you just have to change all the tracks that you do for yourself that you care the least about, or that you do for the hell of it, end up being the ones that pop. It's funny how consistent that is, even with my writing. Also, I'll put. And I have an attention to detail in both cases, but I'll put so much effort into something I'm sure from the very outset is going to be a huge hit, and it'll just fall completely flat. And then I'll just kind of vomit something out that has a lot of emotion in it. And that rawness, I suppose, just clicks, and it's depressing or really encouraging, depending on how you look at it, because I'll do these things very quickly that pop and do very well, like this recent blog post on what my morning journal looks like, and I think it's just called "What My Morning Journal Looks Like," which took me a half hour or maybe an hour to get out. And then there are other posts I spend 30 hours on, and I it's crickets, just crickets.
Wow. I would like to ask you. So is the morning journal? I was going to ask you, what is a post that you've done that you didn't think was going to do well and then resonated with a lot of people? Is that the morning journal one?
That is one example. There's another that I put up, which was let's see, it's called something along the lines of, do you need to borrow some strength or borrow some strength today? Watch this. And it was just it was a YouTube embed with a bit of context. And it was about, I believe that in particular case is Kyle Maynard, who's this, he was born a quad amputee, but ended up being a very successful competitive wrestler, did the military, he was the first person to do the military crawl all the way up Mount Kilimanjaro. He's just an incredible guy. I've had the privilege of meeting him and spending time with him. Very short, very, very emotionally open, and it makes me wonder if that's the case with the music as well, even though it's conveyed through sound and not through words.
Yeah, I think so, and that actually just made me that what you just said right there reminded me of something. So one of the people on our team, our art director Dean, who helps curate all the visual aspects, we could do a whole nother episode on everything visual, from the show visuals to the album cover. Dean's a super old friend of mine, and he designs everything for us. Everything you see visually passes through him. And the other day he sent me a text, and he said, you have to go listen to this podcast, this Radiolab show called In the Dust of This Planet. Oh. And the episode, if you haven't heard it, I implore you to go listen to it. It's just fascinating. And the whole thing circulates around this philosopher and nihilism. I won't go too far into it, but it's about kind of the apocalyptic feeling of what's happening right now in the world, and how what I took from it and how it resonates with Glitch Mob, and the reason why he sent it to me was that there's something about badassery and stuff, and something that, and they even say that in the podcast about what is it about something that is badass that is resonating with people right now, and it ultimately has to do with music being like a force field or a shield. And when you said, "Can I borrow some strength?" it just really made me think of actually music. And part of the reason why our music resonates with people is it's almost like in the darkness of, say, our album cover has this samurai figure, but there's something about it that says that I've seen into the darkness, I've seen it, and I'm not afraid. And what they say in that podcast really resonated with me. And I almost see music in the same way of some of this stuff that you do, of you're handing people these little tools, although maybe music is a different sort of emotional or spiritual tool. I mean, a lot of people will work out to our music, and if it helps you get out a couple more reps in your set, then I think that, that's really one of the benefits that it has to offer.
Definitely. Oh yeah. No, I need to pick up. This is your brand on music as well. There's another one called musicology, I think it is, or musicophilia, one of the two.
That's Oliver Sacks.
Exactly, which I really want to dig into. And back in the day, I used to take 5-piece drum lessons and got into hand drumming recently, which
that's cool.
Yeah, with the djembe and a couple of other types, which I'm really enjoying, and it's just a very therapeutic.
Yeah.
And actually, do you find, so for you, do you have do you play any traditional instruments, or have you practiced any traditional instruments?
So the short answer is no. And I think that's kind of a funny thing. And you actually, when you had tweeted this morning, and I posted on our Facebook asking some people what they would want to talk about, and something that come up, one of the guys posted something like, how important is it for you to learn traditional instruments to perform or produce music?
Yep.
And none of us have any traditional music instrument training. We didn't go to music school or anything like that. I actually can't really. I mean, I can kind of get around on a piano. I did go to UC Santa Cruz, and I studied, if you could call it that, in the electronic music program, which was more about smoking pot and playing with crazy synths, to be quite honest. But that aside, Ed and Josh both played. They can play guitar and keys just a little bit, but none of us are really that good at playing instruments. Although I feel like at this point I have an intuitive understanding for music, but I've come at it from a very non-traditional angle. I actually came in more via technology. When I very first started messing around with music, it was through computers, and we do stuff to make up for the fact that we're not really that good at. I mean, I'm just like, we can get by, and Ed's a pretty good piano player, but nothing compared to like a concert pianist or someone who's classically trained. But for instance, one of the tricks we use, which actually we were using this yesterday, and I thought this is a very Tim Ferrissian trick, is so, for instance, in Ableton, there's a plugin that allows you to transpose a scale. So what that means is that it allows us to only know one scale. So in the piano, let's say you study C major. That's just one combination of keys that all sound good together.
Right.
And then you use the plugin to move that around. So I actually only know one scale. There's so many different things to know, but I play that one, and then Ableton will actually translate it for me. So
what is the name of that plugin? Do you know?
It's just the Ableton pitch plugin.
Got it.
So there's a plugins that come with an Ableton that allow you to program chords and transpose your playing around so that you don't. It's basically just some shortcuts. So, man, I went on a tangent there, but
no, I love tangents. That's the whole point.
Yeah, I think that so we are actually an example of people that have had we've made a career, but not actually fundamentally being able to perform music
right,
that well. I would say that.
Well, with traditional instruments. So how have you found that to help you? Compared to if there are people in EDM who have traditional backgrounds, how has that lack of formal schooling helped or hindered you, do you feel?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. So, so one thing to mention is that, Ed, before we were doing Glitch Mob, Ed wrote music for commercials, and I think this is an interesting piece of the whole puzzle. Is also Ed so the detail focus, the really hardcore detail oriented stuff comes from Ed, and he used to write music for commercials, and so what that looks like is, let's say that you're writing a commercial and it's a cheerful commercial for bubblegum, and then he would have to write something that sounds like that, or say that there's a dark commercial for a new car that's really technological. So he, for years and years, he was basically writing jingles. So he has the ability. So you can say, Ed, we need to have something that sounds this, and he can actually just like piece together something really quick. And I think it kind of comes back to some kind of the Gladwell 10,000 hour thought, where Ed has spent so much time just churning out different emotions, just really little short snippets of different feelings and emotions, that he had that kind of training, but it's a very real world style training. It wasn't like an actual music school. And so that said, I think, for me, coming into it really bending the rules from right out the gates, and having that be part of the way that I see music, I think has been beneficial, because I didn't understand music really. I just kind of understood my own little corner of it, and I was just doing my little thing. And I remember when someone first explained a chord to me, I was already actually like, having a decent amount of commercial success, but I didn't understand a very basic idea of music. That's like what a chord is.
Right.
And it's the same thing. Like before we went to go play our very first show with our new live gear at Coachella, and I was up there playing drums. I had never even picked up a drumstick in my entire life. So which sounds like something that you have done. I saw the episode of your show where you did that. I feel the pain.
Yeah, that was stress inducing, being on stage. I'd never been in front of an audience for any type of music. I had never performed music for anyone, whether one or two people, let alone a sold out auditorium with with an actual band. That was stressful. But it was euphoric at the same time. It was this very sort of pleasure pain mix. It was interesting, and once I got into the flow, it was fine. Even though I feel like audiences are more forgiving if you're transmitting the proper emotion for a few minutes. They're very forgiving as long as you maintain the flow, it seems. Yeah,
that's true, and I think that's something why people, like when people come see us, you don't come to see us play because exactly like what you're saying is not, wow, they're really, really good at their instrument. Like if you go see Santana play, you're thinking, wow, he is incredibly good at playing that guitar. That is unbelievable. You don't see us, but at the same time, you get the feeling of us being up there, being emotive and playing the songs. And I think, just to jump back, as far as what has helped or hindered, I know a lot of people that have gone to music school and gone to electronic music school or electronic production school. And I think it can help you and hurt you, because in one way you learn how to make a song sound finished and proper, but you also learn the rules. And I feel like most of the really good music that you like is music that inherently kind of breaks the rules. And that's just what's exciting about music, is something that inspires you, or something that colors outside of the lines. And I think that had I gone to a music school and learned the correct way to do it, that's a fast track to being an engineer and being someone who works in the studio and helps other people produce albums. And that's actually a really cool thing. And that's something that I would love to learn how to do and figure out, is to be a record producer, like a Rick Rubin style. I mean, Rick Rubin is one of my biggest inspirations, seeing at what he does, but that's a very different thing than someone like us who are, we're just kind of off in our own little corner, creating our own little soundscapes.
Yeah, no, it's It's funny you mentioned Rick. I'm hoping to have him on the podcast, so I might tap you for questions.
Yes.
If you were to, and I have just one or two kind of longer form questions, then I'd love to hit you with some rapid fire questions from some of the listeners. If you were sort of assigned, it's a very dreary word. If you volunteered for teaching me how to produce music or make music using the tools that you have, because I've always found music very intimidating. But let's just say I were to spend a month with you, and you had, the prize was several $1 million to get me to the point where I could create a finished track of some type that didn't make people cringe. Where would you have me start? What does that first week look like?
That's a great question. So I think that the core of a really good song, it really honestly has to do with what you want to say. So I would actually do some, like, let's say I would ask you to go find 10 tracks that resonate with you, or something that, so maybe I would want to produce a track that sounds like this, or this is really what I'm feeling right now. And just to get you in the general creative space of thinking about what you're really trying to say. And then the next step would be creating, let's say, a sketch, kind of like we do, and focusing on some very basic building blocks of music. So, a very basic electronic song will be a combination of drums, melody, chords, and bass. So those are the building blocks of a song. And you can, and electronic music is so fluid, you can kind of move all of those things around. So we would go over what all of those different things are and how they play together. And actually I wouldn't spend too much time on learning music theory, and as this is kind of goes back to what I was talking about before, is there's ways to shortcut all that stuff to where we could just learn one scale, or maybe not even just learn, okay, these notes sound good together. And there's a thing in Ableton that you could lock the keyboard to a scale, which means that, like, if a cat walks on it, it'll still sound good. And
could have an entire band of 6 cats on keyboards.
Yes, that's actually a great idea.
The cat mob.
Yes.
Oh man.
So we would
get out the trademark lawyers.
That actually sounds like it could have.
I'm just fucking with you.
Okay, I like that. So I would put some tools in place to get everything fixed. So no matter what we did, it was going to sound good. And then just kind of, I think the next step is, the interesting thing, something that's changed over the past couple of years since we started, is that you can actually buy sound sets that are really good. And this didn't exist when we very first started. It makes me sound like, hey, Sonny, we used to have to
walk up the soundscape uphill both ways.
Yeah. I mean, compared to what we actually had, I mean, if you talk to people who have actually been doing it for longer, I probably sound like a snotty child compared to, started in 2006. There's people who actually had to write music on punch cards and stuff like that. It's actually pretty crazy. But that said, we could walk into Guitar Center now. I mean, I don't know if this is a good answer. I'll be like, Tim, let's go to Guitar Center. We're going to spend $100 and buy a great sample kit, because the stuff that people have now are, because it, out of the box stuff sounds so good. So we would find some really good samples that resonate with you, that you like, because a lot of music production has to do with starting with really good source material, and then and taking away stuff is actually a lot more important than adding to it. So what I mean is, if we went to Guitar Center and bought a sample CD that was good and it had really good source material, and then you put a bunch of stuff together, it's a lot easier to start shaving away and removing the stuff that's not there to get everything fitting in its right place.
When you have a finished track, let's just say the finished Fortune days, and again, this is speaking from pretty deep in my ignorance pool, but if I look in, say, GarageBand, and you have multiple tracks, right, for different vocals or music tracks or whatever, how many separate melodies, drums, etc. do you have in a finished song like Fortune Days?
It really changes on a song to song basis.
What would you say the average range is?
I'd say that the average is somewhere around 50.
Wow.
And it can be much. I mean, some songs we've had over 100 tracks, and some songs have been less. Also, because the tracks that we write are, especially something like Fortune Days, there's so many different parts to it, and the way that it's talked about in music terminology is, so it's like each section you assign a letter to it. So like the intro is A, and then the first thing that happens right after that when the drums drop would be called B, and then it goes back to A. So it could be like, and a pop song can be A, B, A, C style layout, something like that.
Right.
And our songs are like A, B, C, A, D, C, B, and it goes on. We have a lot of like complex pieces moving around. So because it's like that, we don't always recycle the sections over and over again. Then it can be, in each one of those sections can have up, 10, 20 tracks. And there's really a lot of layering that goes on too. And I say that's something that, if there are any producers out there listening that are looking for production stuff, that's a big, that's something that we spend a lot of time on, is the layering of the sounds and the sampling, and all the sounds you hear have been processed and are complex packs of many different pieces together to make one sound, so that it sounds custom and not like anything that comes right out of the box.
What percentage of your samples are sort of off the rack versus custom?
It changes on an album to album basis, but say a lot of the stuff is custom. We're pretty, like, so if let's say you open a synthesizer, a very popular synthesizer that's used right now is called Massive. So you can open it and there's a set of presets in there, and you can cycle through them, or you can clear out the synth and then design from the ground up. And we do a lot of that. We do both. But a lot of our sounds are customized, and what that allows us to do is really, really control the sound. And if we do use stuff that is out of the box or preset, we mash it and process it and layer it to the factor where you really couldn't tell.
Right. Who, besides the Glitch Mob, what other bands might you recommend people listen to if they want to hear good layering?
That's a really good question. I'm listening to right now. So there's a producer who's a good friend of ours called Amon Tobin. And his music is so complex and layered, and his album Foley Room, like he out-layered everybody.
What was the name of the album again?
The album's called Foley Room.
Foley, Foley, like the sound effects?
Yeah, absolutely. And he went out into the world and recorded sounds of, there's actually a little mini documentary about it. It's really fascinating, but he's recording sounds of animals and motorcycles and walking around on weird sticks and rocks. And he made a whole album that's almost entirely comprised of stuff like that. And so when you really, if you put that on your headphones and listen to that, that is a real master level mix engineer creative undertaking.
Very cool. I would love to ask you some quick questions from some of the listeners out there, and then perhaps we can listen to another track and then wrap up for this round one. So the first question is, he gave me two, and I'm gonna have to take the more ridiculous. This is Jan Habich. Do you pee in the shower? I assume the answer is yes. I mean, every guy pees in the shower.
Of course.
Yeah, right.
I think it's actually, at this point, especially in Los Angeles, you have to. The drought police would come and get you if you don't.
Ian the BT Winter. This is the desert island question. So if you could take one book, one album, and one luxury, I would just say one third item of any type to a desert island, what would they be?
That's a great question. So I think my album would have to be Aphex Twin Select Ambient Works.
Okay.
Book. Oh man, that changes so much. So book is going to be The Unbearable Lightness of Being.
Okay.
And third luxury item, maybe my Chemex.
Man, that'd be you need to, you gotta hope there's some coffee beans on that island.
Yes.
Yeah, Chemex is great. Have you tried the AeroPress?
I have tried the AeroPress. I really like it.
Yeah. The AeroPress is great. If you're going to make coffee for more than 2 cups, though, the Chemex is a good way to go. Very cool. All right, next question. This is one I think a lot of people are curious about. So if you're comfortable answering it, what are your different revenue streams for the band, for the work you guys do?
So this is an interesting point, actually, that I don't think a lot of people know, but we don't make any money from touring, to be quite honest. I mean, there's a lot of money that comes in, but we take all of it and we dump it all back into the show. So that touring for us, I mean, hopefully at some point it gets there, but it's really labor of love. I mean, the process of building the Blade and all of the bits and pieces that make the whole thing tick was really expensive, and we just decided that we want to do this, and so that is not a revenue stream for us. Eventually, I mean, it's kind of like an investment. I mean, as we keep touring with it, maybe we'll make some money down the line. And touring is a very expensive undertaking because there's people that have to set the show up, and everything has to travel around and be freighted internationally and everything. So there's a lot that goes into that. A lot of people do make money from touring, but right now for us, the equation is not that. So most of our what keeps the lights on is actually mostly the licensing for us and the music sales.
Very cool. Do you guys do any merch? You probably
we
must.
do.
Yeah.
Yes, we have actually, and that's another thing is that I'd say part of our whole DIY ethos is that we have a lot of merch, and we've actually worked on and designed a lot of the stuff ourselves. And almost everything you see in Glitch Mob World is something that has passed through us. But yeah, you can see our merch stores, a lot of really cool stuff, and we've collaborated with some friends of ours and made some cool stuff.
Very, very cool. Are there any bands that you're aware of that you suspect make the majority of their money through merchandising?
Yeah, that's actually, I was just talking with someone about this yesterday. Now that's kind of funny you mentioned that, but in the kind of punk rock landscape, as it's evolved into a lot of those bands, the whole Warped tour, and I don't actually know this to be a fact. This is someone someone else who told this to me. But a lot of what happens if you go to Warped Tour, it's a lot of younger fans there, and the bands who play there don't get paid a whole lot of money, but they make a lot of their money from merch sales. I don't know if it's sort of the majority, but there's that whole touring entity is set up around the fact that they have these huge merch stores that. There's like a big merch mall in the middle of the Warped Tour as it travels around. Got it.
Yeah, sounds like Ozfest also, yep. Which I've been to a couple of times. That is a blast at Shoreline Amphitheater, at least.
Oh,
just insane.
I bet.
Yeah. Let's see. So this is a good one. This is from, I'm going to paraphrase here. This is from Agatha Fox. What are some of your fears?
What are some of my fears? Oh, that's deep.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I
have a very light question to follow this one up.
Okay. What am I? I had a crazy long conversation with my dear friend Ben Dayru, who's another music producer. Just the other day, we were coming back from the gym, and we were talking about how the climate is fucked, and how it's seemingly everything is turning from what could we do to prevent total climate catastrophe to now that it's happening, how are we going to wrestle with this catastrophe? And the more I think and read and learn about what's happening, with the current state of Earth. It seems to be pretty doomed. Maybe not for us in our lifetime, but definitely for our children and our grandchildren. So that is it's a pretty scary thought.
It is. It is. Just as a side note for folks, I just recently interviewed Peter Diamandis, who's the chairman of the X Prize. He does a lot of work with space technologies, and he's a co-founder of a company called, for instance, Planetary Resources, the idea being to send ships to close orbiting asteroids to mine precious resources to bring back to Earth or use extra planetarily. And he would be called by a lot of people a techno optimist, but I was similarly, just in the last year or so, especially after talking to climate scientists, getting very depressed and kind of put into a malaise about like, wow, the whole planet's just going to be boiling in 30 years if we keep it up. And Peter was talking about, I won't spend too much time on this, but talking about how they could actually put up a pane in space that could be rotated very precisely, almost to enlarge or lessen its profile as it in between the Earth and the Sun, to modify the amount of energy hitting the planet's surface. And that he basically said, I think we're going to be able to prevent sort of catastrophic meltdown. But if we're not, the good news is there are actually technologies like this that we can absolutely deploy to minimize some of the damage. And I was like, that's the first time I've heard anything of that. So,
wow. Isn't there a Simpsons episode about that? Isn't Mr. Burns block the sun?
I wouldn't doubt it. Maybe we'll all look back in 50 years and be like, oh my God, the Simpsons fucking called it. That's amazing.
Once again.
And no, exactly. Like with didn't they have a Barack Obama versus Mitt Romney prediction 10 years ago? I mean, The Simpsons, I think there are people with ESP working at The Simpsons as writers, but
that does make me feel a little bit better. Also, just I am with you to when following someone like Elon Musk that is saying, you know what, I'm just gonna go and make this reality better, because I mean I get just everything that he does completely boggles my mind. So it makes me feel a little bit better to know that there are real life Tony Starks out there doing what they can,
working on the problem. So to ask a much lighter question, what is your favorite pastry? This is from Medium Rare.
My favorite pastry, I think it would have to be just a plain croissant.
And you said it correctly too. Is there any particular way you guys celebrate after shows?
No, we have a pre-show meditation we do.
I want to hear about this.
Before every single show. And we've been doing it for a couple years now. And before we go on, we have a huddle, and it's just a quick 30-second meditation, and we say here's to the now, and it's just a way to let everything go and focus and go on stage, and it really helps. After the show, no, we don't really celebrate too much.
I love the pre-show. So is it here's to the now and then 30 seconds of silence?
Yeah, exactly. We count down, we say it in unison, and we also grab whatever other team members are in the room, and then we do a quick meditation. Yeah, just like take a deep breath and then have silence.
I love it. When you think of the word successful, who's the first person who comes to mind?
That's a great question. I don't know if I could actually pick one person, but I would say that I'm so fortunate to be surrounded by so many people that I consider to be successful. And I guess it can be boiled down to the way that I define success is someone who's really genuinely excited about what they get to do and is carving out their own path. Anyone from someone like my sister who's in medical school working to be a doctor, who I was just talking to, who I think has an incredibly difficult path. But what she does, I mean, I guess it's difficult in the sense of, I was just talking to her, she's working at the ICU right now, and I think it can be a really heavy job. And I think of other people who are like my artist friends in LA who are getting to create and do these things. But the fundamental link between all of these different people is just doing something that really lights you up on the inside.
Definitely. Let's see. If you could give, how old are you at the moment?
I'm 34.
34. If you could, wow, we've got pretty closely matching timelines. I love it. If you could give your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Chill out. Calm down.
In what way? In what way?
I feel like myself and other people I know that are, that are in the early to mid 20s get really wound up about things having to be a certain way, or is it good? I don't know. It's just, I think that enjoy, because it all kind of doesn't matter as much as you think it does.
Yeah, that's the truth. Will you remember this in 10 years? Probably not.
No, people don't even remember a tweet 12 minutes later. That's 10 years from now.
That is the truth. Into the slipstream. Is there, I have never been to an EDM show of any type. What show or festival should I go to?
That's a great question. I think that if you've never been to a show, I think, well, you should come to see us play it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Biased, especially because
no, that has to happen. I remember I think we missed each other by a day in San Francisco or something like that, and I was gutted. So yes, that must happen.
Next time you should come. There are, if Daft Punk ever plays again, if you're going to see one show, your Desert Island show, I would say if they do another tour, you have to go see them play, because what they do, and they have really set the bar for everybody. But it's the perfect, their live show is the perfect marriage between just fun, visceral, classic dance music and crazy techno futurism. I mean, it really changed my life.
Wow, that's a strong statement. I love it. Okay.
Yeah, that would be it.
Do you have any particular morning rituals? What does the first hour of your day look like?
Yeah, I do. And it changes also because the way that Glitch Mob works is very much in phases. Our years rotate from phase to phase. So there's studio phase, which we're in right now. Then there's tour prep phase, tour recovery, and then rinse and repeat. So right now, I get up, say probably around 8, and I meditate every day, and I have
for how long?
20 minutes.
What type of meditation?
I practice transcendental meditation, and I've tried all sorts of different types, and this is just the one for me, which I've heard you say in the podcast too. That just kind of stuck. I've done.
Yeah, I did it this morning.
Yeah, it's great. I do it. So I don't actually do it twice a day every single day, and I hope my teachers don't hear me say that.
Yeah, but, I wish since it's just the two of us talking. The two, I feel like a failure if I mentally commit to 2 and then can't do 2 or don't do 2. But once in the morning has a tremendous effect for me.
Yeah, it's really changed my life. It's been a couple years for me now, and a friend of mine sort of gifted me a course because he works for the David Lynch Foundation, and so I got to take the class, and it's really just been life changing. It's because I've been able to stick with it and actually keep it, because I've read so many books about mindfulness and meditation, and I've taken different courses, and it's just TM just happens to be something that you can do on a day-to-day basis, and it's really quite simple.
Do you do it in bed? Do you just wake up and sit up against the headboard and do it, or is it after you brush your teeth, after breakfast? When do you do it?
So I think actually an important part of my morning ritual is that I get up and I don't look at my phone or my computer for the first hour, and I have this quiet time, and I think, and I used to be the type of person where I would get up and right away I'm like emails, texts, tweet, like whatever, looking at the hamster wheel of my phone, and realized how much that was scattering my brain. So meditation for me actually was something that got me out of that state. So I wake up, I don't look at any technology. I make tea. I make matcha tea usually, or different sencha, some kind of green tea, and then I meditate, and then I'll have breakfast or do a quick morning workout that's like separate from a different weightlifting gym exercise, just to kind of get the blood flowing. So I'll do something quick, then I'll have a breakfast, and then I'll intentionally plug in after I have, and I also will, part of this time it will be reading. So I get even just 20 minutes to read a book in the morning before I plug in and jump on the information superhighway.
What would the workout potentially look like? Let's say the current workout or the most recent workout. What were the movements?
This morning I just did some kettlebell swings.
Got it.
And that's kind of like the quickest bang for my buck thing to do. And I've been working on mobility quite a bit more, especially with so much time in the studio. Actually, I've been getting really into these the yoga tune-up balls. They're these like hard these balls of different sizes that you can take, and I think for people who spend a lot of time sitting down, I've been using them a lot. Even when we're in the studio, when we're not sitting in the chair, each one of us will have a foam roller or these yoga tune-up balls, and we're doing mobility stuff, so that actually, because sometimes we'll have these sessions that go 12, 14 hours a day, and so I think it's important to do the focus on mobility. And then I'll have another workout later on in the day, which is weightlifting or kind of like CrossFit style workouts.
Got it. And your breakfast after that morning workout, what does that look like?
I follow a very like paleo / 4-hour body style eating. I was a big fan of. Actually, I've definitely evangelized your book to many friends of mine along the way. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
I have eggs almost every single day, and I love the either scrambled eggs or just fried eggs with vegetables and coffee.
Yeah, that's the breakfast champions.
That's it.
Well, one more question, and then I'd love to maybe close out with a track. What is the best piece of advice you ever received? Or the most important?
The best piece of advice I ever received. It's something my father told me when I was very, very little. When I was, probably 5 or 6, that just kind of stuck with me, and that was, don't force it.
Don't force it. And what is that? Is that everything? Is it referring to work? What is that referring to?
Yeah, it's seemingly such a simple thing that's really just stuck with me, and it's been kind of one of the. It's become something that of a. It's an aphorism that's really stuck with me. I think that for the creative process, that's really our guiding light. If something is not working, if something is not happening, I think it's really important to just let it be.
Yeah.
And just let things happen organically.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that. It's very short, easy to remember. And if I think about, all those posts that I put tons of time into, or chapters that I put tons of time into that ended up failing or just not doing what I wanted them to do, there's almost always a point where it was just like, wow, this is a grind. Like this is it's not coming together, but I'm just going to force it to come together like a Frankenstein.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that very rarely has the intended results, whether it's something creative or just in life in general, is trying to force a square peg into the circle hole.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would love to perhaps listen to another track for a bit, and then then you can come back and we'll learn where we can find out about you and all things Glitch Mob. But is there something we could listen to before we do that?
Yeah, I'll play Can't Kill Us off of our latest album, Love, Death, Immortality.
Wonderful.
The best piece of advice I ever got was actually, it was from my sister, and she's a doctor, and I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was something to the effect of she was working, or she's caretaking for some older people who are nearing the end of their life, and they were just talking about what things that they valued had sort of closing the door in life and closing the chapter, and they're talking about what really meant a lot to them. And it was the things like love and friendship and these personal relationships. And I think for me, there was just something about the essence of distilling down to when it's all the bullshit aside, what really matters in life. And I'll never forget that, using that as a guiding light to just keep in the headlights.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible how easy it is to get caught up in the minutia and nonsense. It's so easy. It's particularly with technology and just the never-ending stream of information and inputs.
Absolutely. And I think, there's something to music and a statement like that, or anything that, I don't know if there's a word for it in some other language. You might know this, but the feeling of when you feel really small, like when you look at the stars and you feel like your problems don't really matter. I think that feeling like something you're connected to something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been a blast, and hopefully we'll be able to do a part 2 sometime soon. But where can people thank you, find you, ask you questions online? Where are the best places to learn more about you and the Glitch Mob?
You can check us out at theglitchmob.com or on Twitter, everything at theglitchmob, and myself at Boreta, Boreta. Wonderful.
Well, thanks once again, man. This has been great, and hopefully we'll get to do a jam session in person. Maybe I'll get to play around with Ableton and cause some trouble.
Let's do it. Thanks, Tim.
All right. Thanks, man.
Take care.
Bye.